So my name is Angelo Laub, and yeah, I mean, I have I would say I have a scientific background, math background. So I studied physics and math, and then during my studies, I drifted into open source development, joined the OpenVPN project, did some low-level Unix stuff and network stuff, and then founded my first company, like a food ordering website that became very popular here in Austria. Yeah, and then after a couple of other small things, I basically joined Slant, which is the company that is developing PrivEOS. We were operating, and we still are operating, an opinion collection tool that is in use by some of the major German publishers, where it's like a small, like an iframe under the articles, where the publisher or the author of the article can ask their audience some questions about the topic, some questions on that article. And so we thought, what would be the next, like what would it take to bring this up to the next level? And we kind of decided that one of the major things would be if the customers would be able to own their data. And what do I mean by owning their data? By owning their data, I mean that they can decide who will be able to see the data, when, where, under which conditions. And also, if the publisher makes money with that data, that makes sure that the users also get their fair share. The idea here is that that PrivEOS basically helps you build privacy by design services, where even like where even the operator of a service or of a website wouldn't be able to take a peek inside of the data, only if the user allows it explicitly. Yeah, so I think we are at the beginning of a development here, and I think the awareness in the public is already growing for this due to recent scandals like the one you mentioned with Google getting access to healthcare data, which is like I mean, this is disastrous. And also things like Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, and all this kind of stuff. So all these incidents are raising awareness in the public for the data security, and that it's important that you don't give your data just access to anyone. And also with laws like the GDPR in the EU, and also the CCPA, which is the American equivalent, the California Consumer Privacy Act. This is also now increasingly putting pressure on companies. And companies are also slowly realizing, or have to realize, that collecting data is a liability, and owning that data costs you more than just the hard disk that it's stored on. Yeah, so what we have built is not like a ready-made system for end users that they can just sign up for and get money. So what PrivEOS is, it's something for developers. It's a tool for developers that lets developers build tools that keep the user's data private. And of course, the developer can also put in some kind of incentivization mechanics with a token or not with a token, whatever, yeah, to incentivize the users. But it's something PrivEOS supports and lets you do, but it's not something that is sort of like forced upon you if you are using PrivEOS. We try to be blockchain agnostic, so the node network that we are building can connect to many blockchains at the same time. And we are running at the moment on the EOS mainnet, on the Telos mainnet, and a couple of test nets. And you can also do like inter-blockchain communication over it. So you can sort of like an app, or a user can say, I have something stored on Telos, and now I want to send it over to EOS, to the EOS mainnet. And then there's a sort of a two-way oracle, basically, that lets you do that. PrivEOS is a data privacy tool for decentralized applications. And I want to start by quoting Bruce Schneier here, who said, "Data is the pollution problem of the information age." And this is something I always like to keep in the back of my mind when thinking about problems like this. So in every one of you know, everything on a blockchain is transparent. And so if you're building an online casino, that's probably not a huge problem for you. But what if a dApp needs to store personally identifiable or sensitive data? Yeah, so think of something like a decentralized insurance, a data marketplace, something like uncensorable file sharing, a dating service, a human resources website, social media applications, things like that. Yes, where personally identifiable sensitive data is involved. How do you do that on a blockchain in a decentralized way? I mentioned the new legislation, GDPR and CCPA. And so companies can get sued for and fined for misusing or mishandling customer data. So what is the solution to all of this? And the solution would be to build your application as a zero knowledge service. And this is just a fancy way of saying that you use encryption for everything, let the customers own the data. Yeah, and then the idea here is also that you can't get sued for the data that you don't have. Yeah, and this is even if you are a decentralized application, you might say, okay, who's going to sue me? We're decentralized. Well, this is not entirely true. If you are a developer of a decentralized application, you still have some liability as the developer, because even if you're only developing a software, you still need to make sure that the software is developed in a way that makes it usable while complying with existing laws. And so you still, even in a decentralized system as a developer, you have some kind of responsibility. And so PrivEOS is a tool that for developers that help you in building zero knowledge services. And what PrivEOS essentially is a decentralized key management system. So you might be familiar with key management services in a traditional corporate world. And it's basically a trusted third party that stores your encryption keys. And then when you need to retrieve those encryption keys, you would say, okay, I'm Angelo here. Please give Bob this key. And then this key management service would send the key to Bob. And of course, the problem here with a centralized key management service is that it requires a trusted third party. Now we're living in the decentralized world. So what are we doing? We are replacing basically trusted third-party entities with a trustless system, where it's no longer necessary to trust an individual third party. And this is what you see here. So it's basically an end-to-end encryption system, where on the client side, here on the left side, Alice has something that is secret. It's encrypted on the device of the user, and then the encryption key is split using a cryptographic technique called Shamir secret sharing. into n pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how many, as many as service providers there are. And then when a Bob here on the right-hand side gets access to this piece of data, each of the service providers send their individual piece of the key to Bob. Bob can then reassemble the individual pieces of the key into the original key. And this again happens on the user's device. And then Bob is able to decrypt whatever data Alice has. And so a quick word on Shamir secret sharing. Yeah. So it's a method for distributing a secret amongst a group. Wow, I can't see my slides. Of participants, each of whom is allocated a share of the secret. The secret can be reconstructed only when a sufficient number of shares are combined together. Individual shares are of no use on their own. And this scheme is provably secure, and this means that an individual service provider who has just one or several pieces of the key gains no knowledge on the key itself or on what kind of data it was used to encrypt with. Yeah, so there's no longer a need to trust a particular service provider. There are some requirements for service providers. I mentioned already that these align fairly well with desired properties for block producers as well. And I also mentioned that it's something that is intended for developers to use. The benefit for developers is it comes with a ready-to-use network of service providers. Any developer can build their app on top of this. It's backed by the EOS blockchain, but it can also run on private blockchains. It provides auditable access logging. So if somebody accessed a piece of data, there's a transaction in the blockchain, documents this. And the great thing is you can define the access rules in a smart contract. So you can have an application-specific smart contract that defines the logic, the circumstances, the logic under which a particular user may gain access to a certain piece of data. And this can be a smart contract, and we all know what the benefits of smart contracts are in this regard. We're also working on some privacy-preserving computation module that lets you extract data from encrypted files, yeah, if the user allows it. Just to give you a short overview on what would be involved in using PrivEOS and on building it into your application. Yeah. So here for the people who can read code among you, here's a bit of code. Yeah. So basically the first line, you generate a key, a random key, and this happens basically on the device. So either in the browser of the user or on their mobile device. Yeah. So they generate a random key, and then they have a secret message that they would like to store, and then you encrypt the message with that key. And then you can call PrivEOS.store with the parameters user identifier and the key. And then this does all the heavy lifting. This is the client SDK that does all the heavy lifting, splits up the key using Shamir secret sharing into several pieces, sends it onto the service providers, onto the network, and all that kind of stuff. So this is done automatically by the client library. So this is really not so difficult to integrate into your application, as you can see. On the receiving end, so if you would like to request access to a file that's been stored on PrivEOS, yeah, you can just call PrivEOS.accessGrant with your username as a parameter and the identifier of that file, and then you get back a transaction ID, and then okay, you have been granted access, and then you can make a second call that says PrivEOS read, which basically gives you back the full key. And again, here, the client SDK does all the heavy lifting. It collects all the different key pieces, assembles them together. And then as soon as you have, in this callback, as soon as you have the key, yeah, you can do whatever you want with it. You can retrieve the original piece of data that was encrypted. You can retrieve it from IPFS or wherever it has been stored, decrypt it, and do whatever you want with it. So this is really just to show you how easy it is to integrate this into your application. And one example, so this is actually one of the example applications that we have built here at Slant. So this is a decentralized Twitter application. And as you know, Twitter, that we all know and love, lets you switch your timeline into a protected mode if you want. So you can have a protected account. And if you have that, only your followers that you explicitly selected, only they will be able to read your tweets. But of course, the contents of your tweets are in the centralized Twitter database in an unencrypted way. So Twitter knows what you have been tweeting and potentially can also censor you based on what you've been tweeting. And in a decentralized version of Twitter, it would be encrypted and stored in PrivEOS, the keys, and whoever is operating this Twitter service would not be able to look inside of your encrypted data. They would only be able to see garbage. And that's basically the advantage. Yeah, so to just recap, it's perfect privacy for the user. It's no data liability for the operator of the service. We are not creating any data pollution. It's sort of the electric vehicle of applications. And in my opinion, it's the future of app development. Like if you are developing an app, if you're starting to develop an app in 2019, 2020, this is how you should think about managing your data, in my opinion. And by the way, we are looking for node operators to operate on PrivEOS. So we have, I'd like to quickly show you our monitor. So this shows the nodes that we have. And on EOS mainnet, we currently have 5 that have already signed up here. On Telos, we already have 3, which could be more. On Jungle, we have 6. It used to be more. We just reset the testnet recently, so it's a bit less. Yeah, so you see, we are still in need of more node operators to join. Just quickly mention that there is an incentive, of course, for node operators to join. So as soon as it goes live for dApp developers, and as soon as dApp developers are going to use PrivEOS, the node operators will be able to earn fees, earn transaction fees. Yeah, so if you're a blog producer who likes the idea, visit us in our Telegram channel. It's linked from our website. I didn't put a link on here, but just drop by in our Telegram channel, say hi, and we'll help you get started and set everything set up.
Well, thanks for the presentation, Angelo. That's really cool. And as I see from the links, people can follow you on angelo@slant.li and also find you on Telegram, right?
Yeah. So this is my email address here. Email address, yeah. And so the Telegram channel is actually Slant. So this is our Telegram channel here. Slant protocol. No, sorry. Slant official. Yeah. So that's the Telegram. That's the Telegram. Yeah. And this is us on Twitter as well. Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. So finally, what does it take for a developer to get started with PrivEOS? How does a developer get started on the platform?
Yeah, so it's a permissionless system. So you just download, go to our GitHub here, download the SDK, read through the developer documentation here. So there's a in the documentation wiki. So there is PrivEOS. So this is the main server software, and this is the client SDK here. And so here's a README, and we have a getting started guide, and also a link to a few example applications. And as a developer, it would probably be easiest if you just take a look at the example applications, like this one, for instance, which is a decentralized Twitter that I've mentioned. And you can see, like, here we have a smart contract component. So you can see here what it takes so this is a very simple example contract here, and also here a front end. So this is a very simple Vue.js front end. So I know in EOS world many people like Vue.js. Yeah, so, and this would be a great starting point for any developer. And of course, if you would like to develop on PrivEOS, just stop by our Telegram channel, where we're like almost always online, and I'm glad to help. Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, this data thing, this new way of thinking about how to collect data, how to deal with data, I think we are at the beginning of a slowly changing paradigm shift, and I think we're going to see more and more services that are respectful, that are more respectful with user data. And but what I think is we're probably not going to see them in like next year, probably not so many on public blockchains. I think we will also see a lot of the system, like hybrid systems that have maybe somewhere some blockchain component, but they're like 80 or 90% like a normal service, a normal website, but they may have a blockchain component somewhere, or the company is using like a private blockchain, like maybe a private instance of EOSIO somewhere. Because this can also have, I don't want to get into this discussion now, but I think also from like talking to customers, we're seeing a lot of interest there for people to set up their own like blockchains, and hopefully they'll be able to more easily communicate then with other blockchains as it is now. And I see a trend there, and hopefully it's going to continue, and certainly it would make us very happy.